All right. So, Kelly, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you. And we were just talking about how busy the day it is getting into the holidays. So, so excited for you to join us. And you said you had a Elsa breakfast this morning. So I can't wait to hear about that.
I did. It was very exciting.
So, Kelly, we always start off, we just want to get to know about you. So please tell us about who you are, ugh, I can't say it today, personally and professionally.
Okay, great. So I'm Kelly Beecher. First and foremost, I am a mom to two girls. They're 3 and 1. So as I
Mm.
mentioned, I did start my day. We are very much in the Elsa mode with the 3-year-old, and she came to breakfast at my 3-year-old school. So that was very
Wow.
exciting morning. Yes, and every other 3-year-old there was dressed up like Elsa and had all their clothes on. It was very cute. So, but my girls, they definitely keep me busy. They keep me humble. I feel like they have challenged my negotiation skills. They remind me daily that I'm not in charge of anything. And I really think they also remind me that sleep is an underrated luxury,
Mhm.
especially having, anyone who has them close in age. Actually, my 1-year-old sleeps very well. It's my 3-year-old that does not sleep so well. So, yeah, so I'm a mom. The other thing I would say I closely relate to is I'm also a triathlete, um, relatively
Very cool.
competitive sometimes. And I've been doing that for a long time, probably about 10, 12 years. And I really think that that does shape how I lead and actually just how I show up day to day. I find it requires endurance, focus, consistency. And I think that's very similar to leadership. Progress isn't always about sprinting. Sometimes it's about showing up, being consistent.
Yes.
Conditions are
Mhm.
not always ideal. Um, there's days that you feel strong. There's days that you want to crawl into a corner and take a nap. But you still have to show up and get the work done. So I do correlate those things, those two things very frequently and lean on what I've learned in triathlon and work a lot. And I think that mindset has really directly carried me through some um, challenging times at work before. So
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah, between family, I travel a lot for work and for fun. And then between that work and triathlon, I feel like I'm constantly navigating that balance of like family, career, and personal goals.
Mhm.
So, one thing that's so interesting, Katie, I don't know if you noticed it, a lot of the people we invite on supply chain leaders do, like, very strenuous physical activity.
Do they really?
Yes.
There must be
We had
something in our
somebody.
minds, something wrong
I
with us.
know. I do wonder if there's something in the, like, either, like, extreme sports or ultra marathons. We had somebody that was doing that. It was, like, the extreme Pilates thing. I can't remember what that one was
Oh
called. But,
well.
yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. I just had that aha moment, and I do wonder, like, does that lend itself or we're doing it to counterbalance? I don't know.
Either counterbalance. Sometimes people say type A, but I don't necessarily think that's always true. But definitely a mindset, perseverance. I think
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think they
Mhm,
both require a lot of perseverance, no matter what's happening.
Yep.
mhm.
Yep.
So, um, and then so professionally, I have been in supply chain my entire career. I started in global trade, way back in the day. I'm currently the vice president of supply chain and operations at Reduce. We make vacuum insulated stainless steel drinkware, which has everybody is very familiar with Stanley and the craze that has happened the past couple years. I've been with Reduce almost 5 years now. It's been a very exciting journey to be with them through significant growth. They've been around for 20 years, but the past 5 years within drinkware has just been unprecedented growth, which has been fun. So I lead a team here in the US, and then I also have an operations team in China. And we really just focus on building the resilient, scalable systems that we need in place as we grow. We started from building the foundation all the way to now something that's repeatable and scalable to continue growing. Before reduced, I held roles in leadership at DKB, which is also another housewares company, at Amgen in biotech, and then
Mm.
also at Amway and Neutralite. So a lot of different um, disciplines. Um, and like I said, I started out my career in global trade at Amway, and then also at Hayworth, which is a furniture manufacturer.
I love how many industries you have seen. I mean, talk about it's everything from, like, consumer goods, biotech, it is
hmm
everything. And you've been in supply chain now for 20 years. What did you have, like, an aha moment where you're like, "This is the place I'm meant to be"? Was it a build over time?
Right.
How did you know that you wanted to be here?
So interesting enough, my aha moment came when I was actually in internal audit because I did spend a
Mm.
few years in internal
Wow.
audit. I know. I spent a few years in internal audit while I was at Amway, and it was an amazing experience. Um, but I was actually auditing demand planning. So prior to that, I'd always been in a either global transportation or a global compliance role. And I was auditing demand planning and I saw just really how vast and interconnected the supply chain was,
Mm.
from the demand signal, the sourcing to production to logistics, compliance to the last mile. And that's when I realized I didn't want to just stay in one lane, like trade compliance and pigeonhole myself. I wanted to touch every part of the supply chain. And I love complex challenges and I like work that changes day to day. And that's exactly what supply chain offers. I mean, there's never a day that goes by that we have two problems that are the same. And I like that every decision is very tangible and we have the ability to make an impact. And so after that, I was like, this is where I belong. And I really, was focused on designing my career so that I could be back in supply chain and touching all aspects of
So, Kelly, you brought it up. So you were
it.
an auditor,
I
and
was.
you have to have a lot of regulatory discipline, and you spent years doing that. And so sometimes people can view auditors as maybe sometimes like the bad guy looking for mistakes. And so, how
Yes.
do you think having that auditor lens has helped you be a better vice president of supply chain? And could you just talk
So
us through that?
I definitely, I have to admit sometimes even to this day, it still makes me very skeptical. And I need to remind myself to take my audit hat off. I even tell my team to put me in check when I'm being too much of an auditor. Um, and it's crazy how when you learn some of those skills, how difficult it is to let them go. But that aside, I think it has served me really well. I was able to learn a lot about finance during my time in audit, which that's been very valuable. I think it's very valuable no matter which department you work in an organization. But I also had to learn a lot about process integrity, not just the outcomes.
Mm,
And
Mm.
so, it's given me a lens to challenge reasonable assumptions and to quickly trace back numbers to their source. It has really allowed me to have this ability to just quickly trace back to what the source is. Um, it does also sometimes make me dig into spreadsheets too much, but that's my own personal problem. And then also easily spot control gaps or risks that we need to mitigate. Um, as an auditor, I think you learn to look for key phrases that can expose weaknesses,
mm.
or expose workarounds. There's just different phrases and um,
What are
things
they?
like
I wanna know what they
those
are.
I know
this
those gonna be my question. I was like, "Ooh, give us
yeah,
some
I
tips."
was thinking about when I was thinking about this, like the system won't let that happen, or we've always done it that way, or it's getting approved systematically. Those sometimes are red flags for like every people are on autopilot and you're not actually there's a lot of times that the system's not actually catching it. So
Yeah.
you just learn to look those little phrases. I also think for me, if you're always expediting, that's a red flag.
Mm,
If something's always being expedited, whether it is in supply chain or in another department, that means something else is not happening the way it should
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Some good clues to look for. I appreciate that. No, one of my finance partners, his background was internal audit. he always found, and I don't think it was cynical. I think it was like he couldn't help but not see where we had
Yes.
process gaps.
Yes.
And I think that's a real I feel like I learned a lot just by working with him. So I think it's a great skill.
It is definitely true.
Okay, so one of the things I want to talk to you about is your role is incredibly global, and I think even your experience before this, like you've been to over 40 countries, which is so cool. We often talk about having a global supply chain, but oftentimes you're sitting in the US. And
Mhm.
so, can you share like a moment or a learning, a story where from your travels, it could have been to a factory, could have been a port, that
Mhm.
really changed how you thought about managing your global teams from the US?
Yes, definitely. Um, I mean, the reason I love travel is like whether it is for work or personally is it's just a very different perspective. So you see everything from a different perspective when
Yeah.
you're in another place than in your comfort zone. And that's why that was one of the reasons I took the role in internal audit is because I wanted to work and experience different cultures. And when you do an audit, you typically go for maybe 3 weeks to a month and you're physically in that country learning and working side by side. So, however, I think, working on the factory floor in other countries and also visiting ports like in Asia or in India, that really drove home for me that supply chain it's never abstract. I mean,
Mm,
it's from the floor to busy ports. Like you see firsthand that like the constraints and the processes and the challenges that don't show up, like on dashboards back home.
Yeah.
You know that what we're doing back home and making assumptions. It just directly it I think it fundamentally changed how I manage my teams. Like now I emphasize that they have the context and that they communicate. N- I if I see too many email chains pinging back and forth, and specifically between like my US and China team, I'm like, you guys need to get on a call. Like this
Mm.
isn't, everyone here is you think you know the perspective, but if you get on a call and talk through it through Zoom, I think this will get solved much quicker. And most of the time it does. So it just goes back to not making assumptions and really understanding what their challenges are because their challenges are very different than what we have, sitting in a company office.
mm. That context reminder is really good, and I'm like you, Kelly, when I see the email chains, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, somebody schedule a meeting,"
Pick up a
and
phone, pick up
Yeah,
a phone.
I
pick
never
up the
usually wanna say
phone.
schedule a meeting, but sometimes I'm like, "We're 40 emails in, so
Yes,
let's just
yes,
go." So
yeah,
I felt that in my heart. I'm like, "Yes, tell them to schedule the
yeah,
meeting."
yeah.
Okay, so Kelly, you worked as a consultant for Amgen in cold chain logistics. So we talked
Mhm.
about moving furniture, water bottles, so that's one thing. When you're
Yes.
moving biotech products that could spoil with temperature shifts of just a few degrees, can you talk
Mhm.
about what did that high tech, like or high stakes world of pharma teach you about process discipline, and kind of how do you use that today?
So, the number one thing I learned is that if it isn't documented, it didn't happen.
Mm,
So, um, and also that change control is non-negotiable.
Mm.
Consumer products, it's that I'll be honest, like that mentality is often challenged because for example, water bottles, right? That's not a $1 million molecule. It's a tumbler. And so that can be challenged and sometimes I think deemed as a little bit bureaucratic, but no matter how small you think the change is, it can have a bigger or larger consequence downstream. So I truly believe that spending a little bit of time up front documenting things like change control, version control,
Mhm.
can have significant time and money savings later on down the road.
that's a good
Couldn't agree
reminder.
more. And like I remember this was not even with trade. This is a manufacturing plant that I worked at. And it's the only
Hmm.
plant I worked in that ever had this. And I'm like, we should have this everywhere. But anytime somebody made a programming change, like one of the
Hmm.
controls engineer, we had a log and it automatically went out to like a disk list in that department. Cause kid you not, it was always like the change got made on a Friday. And when you came in on
Yes.
Saturday, it didn't work. And if it wasn't for documenting that change, like your controls tech coming on shift would have spent hours and hours
Yes.
just even trying to find what what changed, and it seems so small, but that one change in logic, I mean, it could disrupt the whole system sometimes.
It's crazy, like, going a little bit off, but, like, you would be amazed. So has, like, on the bottom here, right? Every tumbler that is made has this little bead, and when somebody took their tumbler apart, they took a Stanley tumbler apart and then tested internally and found lead, okay? And
Yikes.
lead that never touches anything. It's a solder bead. So we had to change every bill of material, like not our product, but we wanted to be proactive about it in case anybody ever cut our product apart and tested it. So we had to change, and like, just a minor change of that, if that doesn't get documented in the bill of material and then in the spec and then passed on to the factory, you can make 200,000 of these with
Mhm.
lead, and
Yeah,
you have to throw them all away.
yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy the impact of, and there's a lot of resistance
It's funny, I don't know if you remember those
documented change management. It's
the
amazing to me.
operators that will, like, come on shift and just start changing things, and I'm like, "You didn't even see what
Yeah,
happened."
yeah,
Like, I'm like they're like, just like, it's almost like,
yeah.
"Just gonna
Same with
make my
like,
little adjustments."
laser printers, screen printers, one minor change, and like the next thing you know, your logo is completely different or in a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
spot. And like, yeah, so I'm all about documentation and change management.
It is a good reminder.
But yes.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, is you are a licensed customs broker. And for our listeners who don't know what that is, like this is actually a really, really difficult exam. I think it has a pass rate of like 15%.
Mhm.
So it's notoriously difficult. Why was it important for you to get this technical license? And like how has it served you over the years?
So when I got the license, I had no idea how much it was going to serve me or what I was getting myself into. Um, but now, with the current environment and tariffs, everybody knows what a customs broker is and a lot of the terminology that's around it. But so it was way back. I was actually an intern at Van Andel Global Trade Center at Grand Valley. That's where I ultimately graduated from. And I had a mentor who challenged me to take the test, and I had no idea what I was doing. I signed up, and she told me about it, and like I learned a little about it in some of my courses, and then I was like, well, I can do this. I'll study a bit. I'll sign up and take the test, and I failed. I only failed by one question actually, but I
Oh,
was
wow.
really not happy. I think the passing rate is like you have to get 70 or 80%. I forget now. It was a long time ago, but it was definitely not like 95 or 99. It's pretty low um score to pass. But so despite that, I still went into trade. My first role out of college, and after about a year and a half, I changed roles and I was working for an international trade lawyer, and he required everybody on our team to be licensed.
Mhm.
And like I said, I didn't know it then, but it has become one of the best things that anyone has ever made me do in my career. He was an amazing boss. He also used to make me write down my career goals and aspirations. Like every 6 months, every 6 to 12 months, he's like, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? Where do you want to be? You own your career. Nobody else does.
Oh,
So he was amazing. And, now I use it all the time. I mean, especially since 2018, since the first round of from tariffs, but I can make more informed decisions with our brokers. I can ensure that they're always in compliance with the regulations because ultimately the importer is the one that was responsible. It does not
yeah.
matter that you've hired a broker. You are ultimately responsible for everything that you bring into or export out of this country. Um, I can mitigate risk for my organization. And then I think what my favorite thing is in all of my roles, I've been able to ensure that supply chain is involved earlier in the new product development process because a lot of times, or I would say previously, compliance was also often the group that you would go to when there was a problem, when
Mhm.
something was stuck in customs
Yeah.
or, and now but because of this, I've been able to be involved much earlier, which can help with tariff engineering. It can help a company save money. You could change the country of origin of a product if you change one material. So there's really a lot that you can do by having your team involved earlier in the process.
So, Kelly, can you talk a little bit about like what is tariff engineering and how can you save, you know, secrets or anything like that? But like how, like, please talk a little bit about that. And then also want to hear about, you said it, how early should supply chain be involved?
Okay. Um, I mean, I think supply chain should really be involved at when it's at concept. And it does depend on your products. For example, there's certain products that have a lot of flexibility, and then there's other products that have very little or no flexibility. But I do believe that it should be early before design decisions are irreversible. And what tariff engineering is it's essentially creating a product or changing the design of a product to get a better duty rate and put it into a different harmonized tariff classification, which so the HTS code is what determines the duty rate and now tariff rate that could be added on top of your duty rate. And some products are very straightforward and other products are not. So, for example, um, you could have a product that is half glass and half stainless steel. And the glass is one tariff or one HTS coded duty rate, and the stainless steel is another. And let's say they're 50-50 in terms of aesthetics and bill of material. If you just change that slightly to put it in one category or the other, that would have a significant impact on the duty rate because if it was more glass, for example, it would be a higher duty rate than if it was more stainless steel.
A follow-up, Kelly. So
Hmm.
with, in the beginning, and I think it's settled out a little bit, with it being so volatile, how do you have, like, I mean, I really wanna know. I'm like, I wanna know your thoughts on this. Like, how do you? Because you kinda, I feel like you end up chasing, and then so almost sometimes depending on the supply chain, by the time you change it, you know, I guess I wanna understand, like, what are some of the
Right,
decisions, like, kinda no regret
right.
ones, and how do you kinda think about that?
So I would say again, going back like before this year, it was a lot easier to make those decisions, and you could have a bit more of a long term strategy on it. Um, And now I would say maybe there's less tariff engineering, more country of origin determination. So where you manufacture or maybe how you bring the product in. So you could maybe bring it in unassembled and then assemble it in the US, or you could ship certain number of parts to another country, assemble it, or add like a certain amount to that product. Sometimes it could be you sew it in another country. So there's a lot of different rules of origin that can impact it. I do think that we're leaning more on that way because it's very hard with the constant changes on the HTS codes to really develop even a 6 month strategy, right? Um, but before that, you could look at it in a couple different ways. Like, what HTS bucket are we in? What features drive the classification? Can a major design tweak help us lower the duty rate or put us in a different chapter, which is the heading of the HTS code? Should the component be imported separately or assembled? Or maybe we can also going back to origin source like a subcomponent in another country. So you can kind of go through a list to determine if your product is eligible for tariff engineering or um, country of origin shifts.
Thank you.
Very cool. All
We don't do
right.
that with tumblers. It's not that exciting. We are changing. We are opening another. We make everything in China right now, but we're opening another factory in other countries. So
Very cool.
yeah, I'm moving to China in
Wow,
yes in March.
Oh my gosh.
that's amazing.
What
Yeah.
city? What area?
So we're going to live in Ningbo, which is by Shanghai.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah. So I'm taking a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old to China
there you
and my
go.
husband. But
It'll
You're
be
like,
it'll be wonderful. Mine weren't that young, but they
yeah.
were 3 and 5 when we moved to India,
Okay.
and
Oh.
I just feel like,
Okay.
we'll catch up after this.
and I,
There's so
yeah,
many
and
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Parker
I
Yeah.
was
want to
3
hear all
too.
about it
Parker was
because
3 when we went to Switzerland.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
awesome.
alright,
Okay.
must be a good, like, lucky
Yeah.
year.
They're gonna love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is around your okay. So base brands now,
Hmm.
you're dealing with all kinds of consumer goods, the tumblers, the vacuum sealed. So you have big customers, I imagine, like a Walmart, Amazon, Target, companies like
Hmm.
this, and then they have their own guidelines that you have to follow. But it also sounds like truly with this big global supply chain, you're also having to manage like actual government compliance too. How do you manage and kind of like understand what's required by the different retailers that you're who are your customers and also the government requirements too? And I imagine too lately it might feel like a lot of this stuff is shifting and changing because everybody's getting impacted by tariff changes and all other kinds of things.
Yes, definitely. So, we have a wonderful person on our team that manages all of our retail and safety compliance, and I don't know what we would do without her. But um, I really break it down into two buckets. So there's all of the retailer testing and compliance, which third party labs perform. And that's whether or not we, as the manufacturer, bring the product into the country or the retailers. Because in some cases, they pick up the goods in their origin country and they ship them themselves. But regardless, we have to pass third party testing. So each retailer has different testing requirements, different label requirements. Different countries have different language requirements. So, for example, you could do a program with Costco US and then Costco Japan, Costco Australia.
Mm.
All these Costcos could decide that they want to also participate in this program. And each country has a different requirement. Although I will say a lot of them do follow the US requirements and also the FDA requirements. We have to, one, understand what all those retailers' requirements are through various portals, guides, um, in many different ways. And then we have to submit all of the products for testing. So that's product testing, label testing, claim testing, etc. And we have to have a pass before that program can ship. And if you don't pass it, you can lose that entire program, which you have already manufactured. So
Mm.
it's really important that you stay on top of those requirements, which are constantly changing. Um, the other aspect of it is the retailer compliance when you ship to the retailers in the US, which I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. So when you ship to, a Walmart or a Target or to Amazon, they all have different requirements of how their product is labeled, how it's scanned, how it goes through the scanners, what size the case pack could be. So again, I go back to documenting. Constantly checking what the compliance requirements are. We have a very strong partnership with a 3PL that takes compliance seriously and that is also up to date on it. So they don't rely just on us. They are
Mm.
also proactively making sure they do ship. I like food grade warehouses because they tend to be more compliant. Um, and so ours is, thankfully, and they do ship a lot of food products. So we rely heavily on them. Um, and then we also found this wonderful software program called Supply Peak or Supply Pike, sorry. And it is a way to dispute chargebacks because honestly, in some cases, this has become like another revenue stream for some retailers.
Mm.
And, whether intentional or not, you're constantly getting chargebacks, and a lot of times we find that we can easily recover them. Um, but we have to submit the dispute, and Supply Pike does that, and it's amazing.
Awesome.
Oh,
I
that's
love
Yes,
all these new like technology
yes,
companies that have come out to help with things like this. Yeah.
it's amazing. They don't work with every retailer, but they work with a lot of them, and it's been amazing.
That's
It's
great.
made the disputes much easier.
that's nice. Okay, we're gonna flip over to some of our more fun kind of advice
Okay.
questions. So you've been heavily involved in the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals for years, including sitting on the board. A lot of people do find networking kinda draining, or they say it feels transactional. So can you talk about how you have built some genuine long-term relationships through CSCMP that have helped your
Mhm.
career rather than just exchanging LinkedIn or just, some of the more
Definitely.
general.
Yes. So, when I used to live out in Southern California, and that's where I was very involved with CSCMP and different boards. And honestly, I feel like the further along I get in my career, the harder networking is. I feel like it's like making new friends when you move to a new city,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Hi, I'm Kelly. Do you want to be friends?" Like, it can, when you're young, you can approach it as like, I'm looking for a mentor. But as you get older, it does get sometimes a bit more awkward. So I, I just found like I have to put myself out there, and it's really important to do that. And I noticed that when I left Southern California and was not as involved, how much I missed it and how much I missed those,
Mm.
those genuine connections. And, um, I think by putting yourself out there, constantly showing up, volunteering, contributing to, in different ways to help out, um, over time, those efforts turn into something more meaningful. But it takes time to build those long-term relationships. And um, sometimes it takes awkward conversations.
I do think it gets harder as we get
Yeah, it
older.
does.
I do. I don't know if we're just old and crotchety or, like, 'cause I'm like, you see 'cause you know, we, like, kids meet, kids are like, "Hi, I'm so and so, we're friends," and they just, like, don't have any and then
Right.
as I've gotten older, you kinda, like, meet people, you're like, "Oh, they're not my people," and then, like, then you gotta force yourself to be around not your you know what I mean? It's easy to be around people that
Mhm.
you're
Yes.
comfortable with, and I don't know,
Yes.
I agree, like, I think you just are
Well,
you know more about yourself, you're like, "I know what I like, don't like," and I don't know if that's good or bad, but yeah.
I read something, and it was saying that just like when you're in college or when you're earlier in your career, in your day, you almost spend your entire day with the same people.
Yeah.
Okay. But as you move along and grow
Mm.
in your career, you're with so many different people, and your day is so split up that it becomes harder to build those relationships because it becomes more transactional. I have this meeting, I get it done, I move on to the next. And, which I do think there is something about it, like, in earlier on in your career, you kind of sit and hang with the same people and work with the same people day to day, so
Sorry.
Agree. I also, though, appreciate, like, putting yourself out there because I feel like that's how you and I connected. Like,
it
we
is.
were at a conference and Kelly reached out and I was like, "Yes." And because I'm like, "I wanna make new friends too." So,
I will
I'm
say
like,
moving a lot forces you to make new friends because you
"It
can, like yeah,
does."
you're gonna be by
Yeah.
yourself as a you're like, I'm gonna be your friend.
Yes, and I have moved a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
have to,
think
yeah.
it's even a good skill set to pass along to the
Mhm.
kids because they
Mhm.
we've been back now here, gosh, I can't believe it's been 5 years, but
Gosh, it's 5?
it's
That means I've
5,
been
which
back 4, right? Mm,
yeah, and
wow.
but I'm so like, anytime they tell me there's a new kid at school, I'm like, "Well, you remember what it was like.
Be
I
their
hope
friend.
Yes.
you're gonna be their friend, you're
Yes.
gonna invite them to lunch, you're gonna do all the things." Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. All right,
That's a
so
good
we're gonna
advice.
round it out with, what's a piece of advice that was shared with you maybe early in your career, and it continues to hold meaning for you today?
So, I think there's 2 things. And the first one comes from, the boss that I talked about earlier, and he
Yeah.
was like, "No one is going to manage your career more thoughtfully than you. So you need to own it. You will have champions, you will have people that support you, but you have to own it, and you have to earn it." And, that I think about that all the time, and I give that advice to people now that ask me all the time. And I think the other thing is that you could be both a strong and an empathetic leader. You can be both
Mm.
at the same time. And I try to there's days I have to remind myself that, and, but I think that's very, very important.
I
Is
think
there
those
a
are
story?
perfect.
I know, is there a story behind that one?
Um, oof, yeah, there's probably a lot, but I don't know that I want them on a podcast. Um,
You're like, "I got plenty that I"
yeah, So I'm just trying to think. Um, I think a lot of times, especially in supply chain, there's times where you have to say no, and it's the best thing for the organization.
Mm,
But who you're saying no to doesn't always understand and can take it the wrong way.
Mm,
And so, being empathetic to where they're coming from and why they're asking for it, but then also being strong and standing your ground and explaining why um, is important and can help, often helps the relationship and can also help them see that perspective, the next time the same thing may have come up.
love it. Thank you.
thank you.
Like really short lead times that are impossible.
Mm.
That never happens.
Oh, Kelly, it's been so great to have you on, and we wish you so much luck on your new adventure, and Eddie's not gonna
Yeah,
give you whatever advice with moving with children, but it's gonna be great. It's gonna be amazing.
Yes. If you have any advice, please share it.
will
We will
do.
do that. Alright, well, you have
Okay.
a wonderful weekend. It was so great to meet you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Great. Thank you so much.